Well, see, even having those thoughts, I feel like that's exactly what I was wanting people to think as well. I think we just wanted people to be like, "What was that? What the, did they just finish?" Whether it's like we just put a song out, and even though the like response has been positive, it's like I see two or three ridiculous thoughts that like might have been like one thought that I had in the back of my mind this whole time, and
Mm.
then he said it, and I'm like, ah,
Well,
no.
now it must be true, even if it
Everyone
isn't.
knows. Everyone knows. Yeah, exactly. So the most recent EP, people might think, they're going in whatever direction, but I feel like the next release is going to be completely different and probably catch people off guard.
For my money, there are few bands who have more successfully navigated the balance between experimenting and adding new elements to their sound and some surprises along the way, whilst also maintaining the core signature sound that their audience knows and loves, than this band by the name of Northlane. Earlier this year, they released their EP called Mirror's Edge, which continued on that excellent trajectory. And I'm so excited to have the opportunity today to chat to their vocalist, Marcus Bridge, about that record and about the band in general. So, Marcus, welcome. Thank you very much indeed for your time here today. To begin, one thing I'm always interested in particular for your band, is the decision between whether music should be released as an album or as an EP, for example. It looks like, other than the very first EP many years ago, this is the first EP in a long time where it's not been a series of acoustic songs or remixes, but all originals. At what point in the songwriting process, or was it before that, did you decide we'd love to create a kind of 6-track record here?
Yeah, I think early on, we, I guess, decided to do the EP, coming out of lockdowns and all of that kind of thing, just to, I guess, take the pressure off a little bit, um, and not have, such a big, um, you know, 10, 11 song vision that we had to kind of fulfill, that all the songs kind of interlink. And, that's not what albums always have to be, but I guess for us, we would feel some kind of pressure to still have some, overbearing theme on the whole thing. And, yeah, we just kind of wanted to take that pressure off a little bit. So for us, the EP was something that we could, just write a song and not have to think about what's it connected to. Is it going to sound like the other songs? So yeah, I guess in that sense, that's why we kind of decided that way.
Was your experience of that as freeing as you'd hoped? Did those songs come together over a period of time then in that way? And you go, at some point, we'll say, this is a collection now. We're happy with these. We can release that as an EP.
Yeah, absolutely. We kind of whittled away at the songs for a little while before, all getting together, and kind of ironing out the kinks, and also just, kind of ironing out the kinks within the band itself. I guess just our relationships after kind of being isolated for so long and not really playing shows, and just making sure that the creative process was like as collaborative and, creative as it could be. So for us, um, I think it was just like a really good step in our, evolution and growth as a band, altogether. We kind of all, I think, grew a lot in that process, and I think it's exciting moving forward what that's kind of going to bring.
Nice. I kind of forget about that whole time in the pandemic. I think my brain's trying to forget that it even existed.
Oh yeah.
Did you start writing songs remotely during that time, or did you kind of wait until you could get together in person?
Um. Well, Obsidian was kind of written and came out like smack bang in the middle of it. So by the time we got out of the pandemic, we were trying to tour that a little bit. And then we kind of got stuck into the next thing. I think like we really like, we love the album Obsidian, but I think that period of time definitely left like a sour taste in our mouth. So we wanted to kind of get onto the
Right.
next thing pretty quick once we kind of were together again as a band, and we were able to kind of, actually write music together and play for people again, and kind of take inspiration away from that.
Yes. Fair. And on this record, you've worked with producer Will Putney, and the producer can have a lot of impact on the sound of a record. I'm wondering, how much are you able to kind of go after a particular producer for a sound you're trying to create, or how much is it sort of logistically these people are available? Who's the right person for the time? Like, what's the balance there for yourselves?
Yeah, I think for there's kind of two levels to that. I think one, we're like quite picky and we want someone, like, I guess for Mirror's Edge, we wanted to work with someone we were familiar with. Like we've worked with Will on a couple of things in the past. So for us, we wanted to just be in a place once again where we could just be a bit more free and work with someone where we didn't have to build up a new relationship with someone and have them understand what the band is doing, which is also in its own way like an exciting thing. But for this, I guess, project, we wanted to just be as comfortable as we could be and be around someone who would just let us do that. In terms of, I guess, if we wanted to go after someone, I think we can go after, like, I guess, a few people like we might want to. It just comes down to if we can afford it half the time. So, but there's a bunch of people we're like really wanting to work with who I won't say in case it just never happens and we kind of jinx it. But
Sure.
um, yeah, it's always exciting working with new people and people who understand what we're trying to do and understand we're just trying to continue pushing in weird directions and trying new things. And if they can embrace that, that's the kind of person we want to work with.
Sure. I can absolutely see how you said that the choice of going for an EP rather than an album is very consistent with the choice to work with someone that you're familiar with as well to kind of ease back in. That's really interesting. In terms of songwriting and the creative process, do you find it relatively easy to get into a sort of songwriting mode, or do you have to wait until the iron is hot, as it were, or do you gradually over time go, oh, that's a good lyric, I'll write that down, and later on in a studio, I might see if I can do anything with that?
Yeah, I mean, I like to do the latter, I guess. I try to have as many little things and at least some kind of idea of what I want to write as we head into the studio. I mean, it does take some time. I guess waiting on instrumentals to come through. I think sometimes to get some inspiration from that as well. John's really picky with what he likes to send over and get started on, because if you start working on a song, he'll potentially hate it in a day and want to change it before like he's even heard the vocals. So it's kind of it's kind of a point where all these songs are kind of ready, or at a point where John feels like they're ready to start putting vocals on, and that's when I'll really dive deep into it. But up until that point, when we're in that kind of headspace where we're looking forward to recording something, where I'm usually writing just little notes, even if it's just like words or phrases or maybe a story or something. It's just a topic I want to write about. That's just something to at least have written down and to start getting my mind like thinking about it. So yeah, it kind of depends, and sometimes there'll be something that will just come quite quickly, but for the most part I kind of wait until we've got like a set of songs, and then we'll kind of pick and choose what I can to put that together.
It sounds like you're speaking from experience that maybe you started working on something and then the music behind it would change and you'd be like, that could perhaps be a tension point. You're like, well, I really like this melody. If you change this, then I can't sing that over it anymore. Has there been a song that's been particularly difficult to kind of come together in the way that everyone in the band wanted it to eventually?
Um, I mean, I'm sure there have been. I mean, I remember there was like a song on Obsidian, which now I can't even remember which song it was, which kind of even proves the point. But like, I I was like really attached to some vocal thing. Um, that in John's mind, he had like a completely different vibe going on, and for me, I was just like, oh, like this is my favorite thing I've ever written, kind of
Oh,
mindset.
no.
But in the end, I think that's also just part of growth, and also being part of a band that is collaborative is kind of understanding that you also have to kind of come to a compromise where everyone's happy, or at least it kind of suits what everyone has in mind. Um, but there's definitely been times where John and I have particularly clashed on just like little things, because I think we're really similar, but we have very different tastes. So like how we approach things is pretty similar, but then we can sometimes clash on our different ideas. But I think that's kind of fun and exciting, and kind of creates exciting music in the end.
Yeah, in the end, I suppose that's going to end up creating a more dynamic music when you have a bit of that kind of different approaches and tastes within there. One thing that interests me in particular is when vocals have abilities to sing brilliantly, but also have a scream lever they can pull whenever they want. In terms of the songwriting, do you ever have moments when you're agonizing over, like, should I scream this bit or should I sing this bit? What, or and do you retrospectively look at songs and go, oh, what if I could have maybe added a scream layer underneath? How much is that a seen as a bonus for you that you can use freely, or something that's a difficult decision when you're writing?
Yeah, I feel like with writing, I have a pretty, like, for me, it's an instinctual thing, and there'll usually be one or the other that I'll be pulled towards. But that being said, that doesn't stop us from trying different things, and maybe, yeah, maybe I'll try something that I would instinctually go towards, and it doesn't feel right. Honestly, it does just kind of depend song to song, and something that I've always found like interesting and exciting about writing for Northlane, like writing vocals in particular. It's the songs are always so weird and challenging for me personally. Like when it comes to writing vocals, I feel like every album or release, the whether it's the structure or the chord
I was going to ask,
progressions
yeah.
or whatever, it kind of challenging and puts me in an uncomfortable spot, but a place where it's really exciting to try and put something to that and
Mm.
grow from it. So, um, yeah, for the most part, I try to go on instinct, but usually the music kind of calls, yeah, for something. And if that doesn't work, we try something else. And that's also where it comes back to the collaboration where we might try something and someone in the band is like, well, that's cool, but maybe we could try something else. And that instantly feels better. So, yeah, my initial thing is instinct, and then working on it with the guys.
Fair. Yeah, when you're alluding to the difficulty of writing over some of the bits and pieces, because one of the things that is a sort of signature sound, it feels to me, of Northlane is this. It's like the rhythmic struggle between the 4/4 and then like an every third eighth note. The rhythms sort of interlock here and there, and you guess you might have a choice. Do I craft a melody that's over the main beat, or do I go off on the tangent that this synth is doing, or that Nick's kick drum placement is doing that's kind of different? Is that a challenge as well? And at what point, perhaps, does the rhythmic element of things come into play before you're doing your bits and pieces?
Well, yeah, I guess when it comes to that instinct thing again, I guess when it does get extremely rhythmic musically, like, or whether that's, a weird breakdown, um, like which song am I thinking of? Is it Miasma? Like just before it
Mm.
gets into the Winston section where it's kind of a weird chugging part, but I'm kind of falsetto singing over the top of it. A part like that, I think for me, it's like, well, I want people to be able to still like nod their heads or follow along to what's going on. So, um, even though it's still kind of doing its own thing, the melody kind of feels like you can latch onto it and understand where the pulse is. Um, but then again, that's not always the right decision. I think that's the right, like that's the awesome thing about music, is that you can kind of go crazy and go with the rhythms of the guitar. But I think for me and for what we like to do, it's we never want to be like too busy and kind of to the point where you lose your place, I guess. I mean, sometimes that's the right thing to do for a breakdown, but we
Yeah.
want to like challenge you while you still kind of know where you are and can kind of still feel the groove. And yeah, I think groove is something that's really important to us, and feeling a pulse and a beat.
Yeah, what you were saying about miasma absolutely rang true, because the breakdown of that, it's on certainly on the first listen, it's like, wait a minute, where is the beat? Hang on, have we changed time signature? Where are we? But then it will come back into a kind of a straighter groove, like, oh, okay, great, and that interplay is quite fun. But also in a lot of your songs, some of the songs themselves feel more like, I know this is the most vague word in the world, but vibey. Like,
Hmm.
and that is sort of the essence. So if there are interlocking grooves, sometimes the move might be, you know what, let's let that be, and I'll come in a section later on. Do you know? Does John, when he's writing some things, go, "I want this to be a particularly vibey song. Let's maintain that as we go," or does that just naturally come about, as you're saying, through instinct or in the writing?
Yeah, I think usually that is something that John would have in mind when writing the instrumental and passing it on to us. Um, but yeah, I think it's just something that, as I very quickly realized when I came into Northlane, that's something that's more important than just being like heavy or it being like super technical. It's that there's still a groove, and even with all the old Northlane stuff before I was in the band, even like it's all like groovy and it's all like got a beat to it and it's all got a cool feel to it. Um, so yeah, I think. I mean, what was the question? I knew that was going. I'm heading somewhere.
I suppose it's about deciding whether to lean into it as a vibey song rather than
Yeah, I think that's always
like a
part of just who we are, and I mean, unless we're going for something that feels a bit more crazy or aggressive or stabby or whatever it might be, I think for us we always still want to have like that feeling and that groove. So I think yeah, it's just part of who we are and who the band is. It's just important for us how that feels.
hmm. There's a specific moment in the song "Let Me Disappear" that I'm curious about. There's a vocal moment which is just da 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 da, da which sound when I heard that, it sounded initially like that's the kind of thing you might lay down in a demo. Like, I have the melody in mind, I don't know what the words are yet, but then later on maybe you go, actually it doesn't need words. I like this how it is. How did that particular moment come about? You're like, I really want this as it is in this song. Do you remember that part when you're
Well,
writing
I
it?
think that song itself was like, I don't know. That's one of those funny songs where I feel like me and John, in a good way, kind of clash. Where I heard it as like a poppy kind of song, and obviously it's pretty like a low tuned riff, but it just had this cheekiness to it that I was like, this feels like a poppy song. Um, but I think in the end, I feel like that might have even been something that John was like, maybe we should try this as like an alternative verse thing, and it just never kind of turned into anything. But we did like that little melody, so we kept it in as just like a cheeky background thing. So it's interesting. It's always interesting the things that you like put in there that end up just being subtle features in a song, but you never know if anyone's going to notice them. So it's cool that someone has picked up on
Yeah, it was jaunty. I like it. You're right. Yeah, it's kind of a levity light moment within there. Uh, Another thing that is so interesting to me always is that there's songs exist on record in a certain form, and then they exist live in a different form in a lot of ways. Even if you play it exactly, it somehow hits different. And some songs I think benefit from being heard live. Uh, the song "Craft" off of your album I enjoyed on the first listen, but it wasn't until I heard it live early this year at the Electric Ballroom in London where like it completely blew my mind. There's something about that song up to 11 that absolutely connects. How much are you, when you're writing, thinking about the live delivery of something, or are you thinking record first and then live you'll figure that out later?
it. Yeah, I think live performance is like number one in our mind. Like we want to be sure that we can pull this off live and that it is as big or bigger than the record. I think that's something else that the guys learned a long time ago is that if you can't play it live or you're putting all this crucial stuff on tracks and not performing it, like it just doesn't. I don't know, just has a feeling. It doesn't feel like real live performance. I mean, I guess that's why John has also started, using his little push station where he's playing samples and stuff live, and he's been
Yes.
really wanting to like make sure that that's part of the performance, and every part of that and every kind of next step we take is always thinking of like how can we pull this off live and how can we make it bigger and better and still be able to pull it off. So it's like crucial to us that it's like possible. And that we're not having to like fake it or do anything like that. So it's yeah.
Yeah, I was curious about that. Thanks for sharing that because there's so many options with backing tracks and the rest which you can use, but then also seeing John there on a digital device, like there's a risk you could hit the wrong button and it completely changes the live performance. But that's part of what the joy of live is for me. It's the slight danger of like, this is happening in this moment. Don't blink because this is a moment in time. And speaking of live, just announced yesterday at the time of our conversation, NORTHLANE are playing Download Festival in 2025, which is extremely exciting for me as that's a festival I go to every year. And I don't think NORTHLANE have played that since you joined the band. Is that right? Or have you
I
played
think
that
we
once
might have
before?
played it. I want to say twice, but it was
Okay.
early days. It was the first time was like maybe the first year or so after I joined the band,
Right.
so 2015 or something. Um,
Okay. All right.
and then yeah, maybe like 2 years after that. But it was a while ago. It's been a long time. So it's exciting to be heading back. It's one of my favorite festivals to play and one of my like dream festivals growing up. So it's exciting.
Sick. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm sure you probably can't say, but would you know at this stage which stage that you'll be booked onto, or is that up in the air until later on, depending on what other bands are doing?
Yeah, I'm not particularly sure. Even if someone in our camp knew, I would be not the person to know. I'm kind of the
Fair enough.
tell me the details the month of,
On the
if that.
morning of, where
Yeah,
am I playing? Okay,
exactly.
great.
Show me the tour poster when it comes out, and I'll know what's going on. That's my style.
Nice. One of the things that a viewer here asked, by the name of Josh, they said you're one of the loudest bands going that they've seen. They've noticed that your sound engineer will like put volume up in certain moments, go as loud as possible in certain moments, and I could verify this. It was incredibly loud at the Electric Ballroom. How much do you like leave the sound engineer to decide different volumes of things or your live set, because it does affect the overall translation of your songs, or how much are you giving kind of direction? We'd love for this song to have these bits and pieces within it. What's that relationship like?
Honestly, like very little. Maybe once when we bring out like a new song or put something new in the set, like we'll record every show so our sound guy can like listen to it the next day and use that for a sound check if need be, or just to get a room ready or whatever.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, maybe when we bring out a new song, we'll have a listen and just be like, oh, well, maybe that thing could be louder. But honestly, our sound guy, Dylan, he's been with us for quite a while now, and he's just so good at what he does. I
It
think
was
with that,
phenomenal, to be
yeah,
fair.
with the volume thing, I feel like he also knows, um, there'll be like this is all boring behind the scenes stuff, but there'll be like volume limits, dB limits in a room, and he
Oh yeah,
knows like
yeah. How
as
loud can you go
opposed
without blowing the PA as well?
exactly. But he's less like let's just make it as loud as possible for the whole time, and making sure that at those peaks when it needs to be loud, it's like pumping and maybe even pushing over a little bit, but then he'll bring it back so that it's kind of still just pleasing to the ear. And I feel like that gives you this illusion like the whole show's extremely loud, but it's really just those moments being able to pop out. And um, yeah, that's yeah, he's ridiculous at what he does. So we're really lucky to
Yeah.
have him.
No, it's such a an underrated skill. It's very difficult to get a mix right in a live room, especially if every day is a different room. It's quite a challenge. So that's really impressive. And going away from the sound for a moment here, but the kind of visual aesthetics. I don't think I've seen an answer for this yet, but Nick and John have kind of face masks on stage. You had a sort of glowing lanyard, and Josh is kind of just doing his own thing on the side. How much are you chatting to each other? What is the consideration for your visual aesthetic, and how much does that play into what you want to display? And also, does your like putting on the lanyard, for example, get you into sort of performance mode? Like right now, I'm powered up. Let's go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for us, it started like a few years back, and with the masks and stuff. But I feel like for us, kind of putting these sets of clothes on, usually it's dark or whatever, but these things that are making us feel like we're playing like a character or really like putting a performance on, it definitely helps us like get into character in that way, and really get in the mood, like you said. I think for John and Nick, I think yeah, that just really helps them feel more like like they can put this mysterious character on and just hide in the shadows, and not Yeah, I feel like not feel exposed even. I mean, we all, I don't know, sometimes I can feel very exposed being up on stage, even if that's just like a stage being like really small can make me feel like I can't move around a lot because I really like
Hmm.
running around. So I can feel like people are just staring at me. I'm actually like quite like an anxious person, so me just not being able to like move and let that energy out kind of makes me feel weird. But then yeah, like putting a certain kind of dress on, it's just like yeah, I feel like I'm getting into a mode, and even if that's like tighter fitting, I'm like, yep, now I'm in like my uniform, ready to go. So for us, yeah, we just like kind of dressing how we like. We have kind of just picked our own um, like forms in a way, but we'll still bounce ideas off each other. John got me onto that lanyard because he's got. I'm not sure if he had the like
Yeah, he had a sort of half goggle vision
yeah the
thing,
like
and
the
then
Saiyan
Nick
Scouter
had
type
like
thing.
glow in the dark glass as well. It's pretty badass.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we've kind of pick up on little things from each other, but in the end, we kind of pick our own way.
Yeah, I could see how it would be a sort of mental shield in a way, because being a singer, especially even if it sounds so simple, but if you don't even have like a mic stand in front of you, it's just a mic, there's nothing in
Hmm.
between you and the audience. It's very kind of a vulnerable position. And if you are
Definitely.
of a shy disposition, naturally be like, but we have to get on stage to perform these songs. That must be quite tricky.
Yeah, well, all those little things as well. It's funny. Yeah, not having a mic stand. It's like I feel like there are moments in a set where I can just put it there, and it just adds something to it. And me having to just stand there or stand in one spot the whole time, it's just like, am I just standing here boringly? But that's okay. That's just yeah, me being anxious.
Yeah, no, it's fair. I also in a song like Nova, which no, you closed the main set with Nova, which surprised me. It had me go, well, they're definitely not done. They'll do an encore because this is such an unusual, like chilled ambient song to end on. Who would do this? But I believe on other nights you did just close with Nova. Is that right?
We did. Well, we did that in I think for maybe the Australian tour just beforehand or something. We finished with Nova for a while, and it went down okay. I think it went down okay in Australia, but I think once we made it to Europe and the UK, I think
These mosh pits are not going to be happy if we end up.
yeah, and I think there's just like an expectation for an encore over here as well. So we just kind of had to suck it up and chuck another song in. But
Oh,
I
is
kind of
that
like,
like a demographic? Is that like a market difference
yeah,
in
I
different
feel like,
countries? Some
I mean, I feel like some people accept it well in other places. I feel the reason I liked doing it was, and even though they didn't completely finish their set this way, I really liked how Once Upon a Time Under Oath on the it's like the Survive Kaleidoscope DVD. They finished their main set playing. Oh my goodness, I've forgotten the name of the song, but whatever it is, it's just like this long, like proggy kind of ambient song, and that's something that has always stuck in my mind as being like a really cool way to finish the set. And I don't know, I feel like Nova being like a bit more relaxed and completely different to the rest of the set, and one of the more different songs in our whole catalog, I think. Um, yeah, I thought it was just like a nice, chill way to like relaxingly fade out into the night.
yeah.
So yeah, it's interesting though. I feel like some people were just like, we want more.
But that was my instinct. Like, well, I mean, this would be an unusual choice. Like, surely they're going to play some kind of big banger, old school thing afterwards. But then as I was going along, it's like the thing about live that's the joy is I don't know what's coming. And I was like, what if this is the last song?
Hmm.
And I thought, actually, this is quite a wonderful way to sort of reflect on the evening that you've had in a,
Yeah.
a kind of a chilled out way.
Well, see, even having those thoughts, I feel like that's exactly what I was wanting people to think as well. I think we just wanted people to be like, "What was that? What the, did they just finish?" Um,
Yeah.
and I feel like some people just get a bit too uncomfortable with that. So we thought we'd chuck something else in, but we'll probably mix it up as we come back and do something different.
How do you decide your set lists? Because one thing that interests me is you're going to play new songs, of course. You got a new album, you want to experience those live, but then you want to play some fan favorites. How do you know what the fan favorites are? Is that based on having played them before? And go, oh, this song goes down really well. Let's keep that, and then in future sets we'll kind of pull that out. But then you don't want to do those every tour, so there's other deep cuts maybe you might want to play. Is that from a place of we've not played this in a while and I really want to? Or is that you get snippets of people going like, when are you going to play this song live? How do you fit in with your next tour, for example, those things?
Yeah, it's honestly getting a lot harder as time goes on because as I look at the set list now, it's like there's only a few. There's more so songs that I would like want personally as like deeper cuts in there, as opposed to like I feel like the set list at the moment is a lot of songs that have been like well received, or they have been singles, and or they're like new songs, so we have to play them, and they've been going down well, and it could because they're fresh. So it's like, yeah, looking at even this at the set list most recent, like on these most recent tours, it's been like, oh my goodness, there's not much I could take out of this set list without, yeah, that. But I really want to put some more songs in. So
Mm.
moving forward, it's going to be even tougher. I guess maybe it's time to extend the set list from 70 minutes onto like hour and a half or something. But holy moly,
I
that
don't
would be
think the
tough.
fans would mind. No one's there
Yeah,
going like, "Come on, lads, could you get off, please?" Um,
yeah, we'll see.
cool. I had a question from Timothy Miller. So, what do you have a favorite song? And is there as a sort of side question, maybe, is there a favorite that's a kind of deep cut that you're like, this song I don't think translated as well, but this is one of my favorites. Not translated well, that's poorly expressed, but what, like a deeper cut is one of your favorites that might surprise people.
No, I think translated well is a fair term because I have a song like Animate off Node. We played that. I think we played that once, and it was like
Okay.
we were like maybe on we were on a headline tour somewhere. I'm sure if we were pulling out a song like that. And it just felt like it fell flat. It felt like it was kind of like a bit more draggy and like it didn't feel right. But that's one of my favorite songs.
Hmm.
I feel like for that song to work, it would need to be in like a more maybe more chill set list or something because it is like the tempo is a weird one to like get into in a live setting. It's like maybe even slower. I mean, it's probably
Right.
it's like a weird headbang. Yeah, it's weird, but I really like that song. Um, but also like Zen off Obsidian.
Hmm.
Plenty is one of my favorite songs to play. Um, yeah, there's a bunch. There's heaps. Ra from Node as well. Um, anyways, list goes on.
Speak Speaking of Obsidian tracks, there, one of the songs that early on after I heard that album, I started looping the singular song on its own for fucking ages was Cypher. And
Hmm.
that one, it seems a very direct, I'll be shocked if this is not the case, very direct reference to like the Matrix
Hmm.
character, which is interesting. I've not noticed in other songs of yours like a specific sort of cultural reference as pointed as that.
Yeah.
What inspired you to have that song about that particular character in that way, and referencing the lines that they said in the movie in that way?
Well, I think it's just like in like using Cypher as a metaphor for just being happy in a way, but like being ignorantly happy. I thought that was like quite interesting. That was also in the middle of lockdown and stuff. So
Right.
um, for me, it was like if this is the real world, like I would much rather be in like an
Yeah.
illusion and be happy and eating that steak, and I don't know. Matrix is also one of our favorite movies, so I feel like it just kind of felt fitting and it felt like an interesting kind of way to look at someone who also in the movie is like a bit of a villain and kind of taking a look from their perspective and yeah, kind of being in a negative mindset and just thinking, well, I just want better. I'm kind of in
Yeah.
this. I just want to feel good. So yeah,
That makes
that's kind of
absolute sense.
yeah,
Yeah, I remember thinking that I was watching the movie and go like, well, "This is the bad guy," but he's got a point. Like, why are we
yeah.
trying to live in this awful greenish, terrible fate? Gosh.
Hmm.
Um, back to the live show thing for a moment here, because I just thought this other thing I'm interested in terms of the staging decisions. How much are you as a band kind of sketching out what you'd like things to look like, or is there like a catalog of staging equipment you're looking through, like, oh, these lights look cool? Like, how do you decide what you're going to put together on a tour and take with you?
Well, for the most recent tours, we've worked with another person who we've worked closely with for a few years, a guy named Luke Thiel, who will like design our light show, but when it comes to that, we'll kind of um, I guess explain to him what we're after, and kind of once again we're trying to do something a bit different and bring a light show and something that you wouldn't just see in your venue usually, like but that usually comes with a lot of suggestions from someone like Luke and the people around him. And um yeah, once again, just we've been surrounded with really cool and awesome crew and an awesome team who can help us kind of reach our vision. um but in the end, we always like to have, a bit of input and want to um yeah, just bring in the new cycle or the new record or whatever we might be touring in with something fresh. So, but once again, we'd be screwed if it wasn't for the awesome people around us.
Nice. And for your lineups and things, I'm wondering how much do you get a say or an influence in who you get to take on tour at the stage? Because especially if you're doing like a headliner that you did in the UK, do you get some decision making input into that as well?
Yeah, in the end, it also comes down to who else is touring and what everyone else's plans are, and a lot of the time there's just so many bands that would be sick to tour that would be an awesome like dream lineups or whatever, but everyone wants to do their own tour, so but we always still end up with such sick bands. We're really lucky that we've still been able to tour and have these amazing bands on tours with us. So um, yeah, in the end, we always have like a say in who we're bringing out, and once again, even while it's so busy, we've been so lucky to have these awesome tours like the Novelist 1056 run, and in the US as well with like Invent and Wind Waker and
Oh yeah, that was ridiculous.
Thornhill.
That lineup was incredible. I was so jealous not to be in the States for that.
That was so much fun. Probably the most fun US tour I've been on. I was also like quite sick for half of it, but I still had so
Oh,
much fun. So I was just like, yeah, it was a good bunch of bands, great vibes, and so was Europe, UK. So hopefully we can keep those vibes going.
yeah. I was delighted with the lineup in the UK as well because it was quite varied. I said this I made a review video of the gig, and for a band like 1056 to be opening for a Northlane gig like this
Hmm.
mad deathcore rap thing, but what was a joy to see was the audience was completely open to it. Like
Absolutely.
it's so far away from the likes of like a band that might have a Nova in their set list,
Yeah.
but everyone like there's. I think back in the day, the lineups would be more like, well, let's find Northlane and let's find two other bands that sound exactly like Northlane. People want to go to that. But I'm loving this diversity of genres and the rest. How much of you are
Absolutely.
you seeing that as well as you're touring around? Like people are being more open to the difference of genres and deliveries.
Yeah. Well, I think we're in a really like cool place where we're able to, like, I just think due to the nature of our music, we're able to have these mixed bills because we can have these moments of light and shade. And
Hmm.
um yeah, having a band like 1056 open the tour, it's such like a good way to hype up a crowd and get everyone ready for the rest of the night. And Novelists, they're just like such a perfect like blending, like kind of transitioning into the rest of the night, like a kind of proggy metalcore, whatever you want to call it. Like the vibe is just really cool. So
Hmm.
um yeah, I mean that's exactly what we want to have in our shows too, is like a bit of variety and not having two or three other bands that sound either just like us or all sound the same. Even like having some variety across those bands is really, exciting for us, being able to see, these different bands every night. And I think um yeah, it just expands people's like uh show experience, being able to see all these different styles and hopefully picking up something new or something different. Yeah, that's exciting.
It's it seems very much in keeping with your band in general. It's about you're delivering on the expectation, but also slightly challenging the expectation. And like, well, what about try this as well, and it's a good balance there, I think. You before that, you toured with Sleep Token.
Hmm.
Did you learn anything, that you've taken with you from that tour in particular, and that band and how they've done things?
I mean, in the end, I think just them continuing to just do their own thing and it being received so well. I think that's, I guess, once again, something we've always tried to do, but it's exciting to see how that can, um, yeah, reach such heights. It's pretty crazy to see compared to a year or two ago where they've kind of gotten to now. Yeah, with the download
Yeah,
announcement headlining
yeah.
that,
This is
that's like
that's
nuts. It's actually
Yeah,
nuts.
I first saw them and heard of them because they played Download in 2018 on the smallest stage. And at no,
Absolutely.
I mean, I loved it. I was so impressed. Like, this band is special. I love this. But also, their songs are 9 minutes long. The first
Hmm.
half is, ambient and chill. And then there's this huge proggy heaviness. There's no way I thought they would ever get the sort of mass audience to warrant a download headliner. I'm delighted they have. I think it's
Totally.
absolutely warranted. But like that, you're right. That is the most impressive example of sticking to your own thing and
Hmm.
the right audience finding it if it's of high quality, whatever it is, and
Yeah.
that could go anywhere. And yeah, I
100%.
think I think Northlane's definitely done that.
Yeah, it's so exciting and super stoked for those guys. It's just like, yeah, it's wild. It blows my mind.
Yeah. Uh, how much do you? This is going to sound like a very strange question. I realize it's very off topic, but how much do you care about or listen to or deal with kind of outside criticisms of your man, good or bad, or do you, is in that vein of staying true to the core of what you care about, what you want to do with your music? It has to be somewhat impossible to completely put up a bubble around yourself. How do you navigate the world of that to ensure that you stay you and your bandmates on the path you'd like to be on?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, for the most part, we do try our best to ignore it. But I mean, I'd be lying if there hasn't been times where, I don't know, whether it's like we've just put a song out and even though the like response has been positive, it's like I see two or three ridiculous thoughts that like might have been like one thought that I had in the back of my mind this whole time, and
Mm.
then he said it, and I'm like, ah,
Well,
no.
now it must be true, even if it
Everyone
isn't.
knows. Everyone knows. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it is hard sometimes. I think, you know, once upon a time being like the new guy as well was something that, um, even still, people still go on about that. But that doesn't bother me too much. It's more so just like confusing. I'm just like, why do like these people have been the same person for over 10 years. They have not changed or like grown. Like they're still complaining and it's crazy. So that's still just like, it just confuses me. But for the most part, especially when it comes to our music, we always kind of stick to our guns and try to just keep doing something different. Because in the end, I think we're also the kind of band where we're never just going to go in one direction and um, like yeah, I think like the most recent EP, people might think, they're going in whatever direction, but I feel like the next release is going to be completely different and probably catch people off guard. But it might not, who knows? But I think um, we're never just being like, yeah, well, now we've done this, we're just going to go way more synthy, and then from that, go even more pop or whatever it is. Like, we always love coming back to the heavy side of things. We always love exploring the more proggy side of things. Yeah, they're all parts of who we are, and we're never kind of saying goodbye to all of that.
Nice. Yeah, I wouldn't worry too much about go in the direction you want to go in. The
Yeah.
reason that you have an audience at all is because the choices you made that are your own choices have been interesting and people have connected with them. So like don't change your core kind of direction there. And speaking
Yeah.
of kind of surprising people in a way, yeah, the one-off single recently as part of a video game soundtrack. This completely new, unique thing you've not done before.
Hmm.
How I guess on the same trajectory of doing an EP to be sort of like freeing in its own way, to have a once-off song for a particular soundtrack, was that restricting because you're like, well, there's a theme we need to execute here, or was there kind of a freedom to it, like, well, this doesn't have to also connect with a bunch of other songs for continuous record. We can really kind of play around here in a different world.
Yeah, I can't speak for John because I think he had a lot more work on his plate than I did. because I think he worked on like a more stripped back version of it as well. That's kind of going to be, I think, part of the game, as
Right.
far as I know. Um, so I think he probably was stressing about it a lot, and I know from him telling me that, um, I guess the brief we got about it being kind of lighthearted, but still this kind of from the perspective of the villain. Um, that was kind of a challenging thing for him to wrap his head around. But I think
Hmm.
once he got his feet on the ground, he kind of rolled with that and came up with what we have now. For me doing the vocals, um, yeah, I feel like it was quite freeing because it's not me. I'm not speaking from experience or speaking about
That was going
necessarily
to be my
some
next question.
yeah speaking about necessarily something that I was passionate about, like an issue in the world or a feeling or whatever. It's about a character and something that got thrown around, like words that got thrown around, like a Team Rocket theme song. Um,
That's
so
hilarious.
even that in mind, like got my kind of got the gears turning, and for me, writing songs that are like from another person's perspective or that are a bit more creative in that way, where it's telling a story, I find a lot of joy in that because it's like there's no restrictions at all, really, besides the story. There's no
Mm.
restrictions on like what maybe I want to say from my perspective, something that I feel proud saying, or um, you know, the only thing I can't do is make it like happy, I guess. But like even still, there's a lot of like tongue in cheek vibes to what I'm saying and the perspective I'm speaking from. So it was for me a lot of fun, and um, even moving forward with North, and I'm thinking, oh, how can I bring that kind of like writing and that feeling to our just regular music or songs that are coming up on an EP or whatever? Because I think that's like there's a way of doing that where it's still touching on something important that people can relate to it. That I want to try and harness from here on in.
Yeah, it wouldn't be. I'm just thinking about it now. It wouldn't be that wild a thing because, like the song "Cypher," you're writing from a character point of view there as well. And even when you're talking about your kind of stage attire, there's a sort of character you can adopt then for that moment to express something. So it probably might have been a bit of an unusual backflip. Like, well, I've got to have this character that I don't necessarily relate to these experiences, but yeah, as you say, it's freeing to like I can adopt this to say something for this song, and I can see a world where that can exist even as a one-off within an album and still be connected to the themes of the rest, right?
Absolutely, and with that, like me saying all this stuff in Welcome to the Industry, it's kind of more so just like a perspective, and it's like not everything's like that, but I mean, I'm sure even still in some cases people would experience that within the music world where they just feel that way about something. So
Hmm.
um, I feel like even still there's something to relate to in some way, but if not, it's also just from my perspective being like, well, that all that stuff that I'm saying, all that stuff sucks like a lot. So it's not me like condoning it or saying it. It's like me obviously pointing the finger and being like, well, stuff like that is
This would
awful.
not be
So
ideal.
yes, absolutely.
I'm so interested in your personal music taste. How much are you plugged into bands in the rock and metal scene right now? Are you aware of other bands and you're checking them out? Or are you trying to kind of keep yourself somewhat isolated at times, maybe to keep your own visions in play as not being affected?
Yeah, I mean, I try to keep up with as much as I can. I guess all the new bands or the new releases. I think for me, it's rare that I find things that I'm really excited about. I guess just as I've gotten older, I definitely got um, I've got like a connection to all the old music that got me into this kind of world.
Hmm.
So I feel like when I listen to a lot of it's that period when I'm starting to get old where it's like, where I think I've heard this before. So they did
Yeah.
that 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's not always the case, and there's always new bands and new stuff that's coming out that I really like. I mean, I'm listening to all sorts of stuff really. What lately? That new Make Them Suffer album's pretty nuts.
Yeah,
What
absolute
else?
heat from start to finish.
Yeah, they're so ridiculous. Nick, their guitarist, is just such a ridiculous player and writer. It's
He's a
wild.
monster.
Bill Murray, I saw you were.
Oh yes,
Honestly, I
delighted
gotta
to hear
say
that.
is I gotta say as well. I've seen your channel before, and I
Okay,
watch it. I watch your reactions. So I saw you were
that's wild.
listening to Bill Murray the other day. Um. Anyways, yeah. Well, pretty much anything that's coming out from him slash from that band, it's yeah, just so
It's
fun and
joy. It's
yeah,
joy, but it's
exactly.
also
It's just
musically really well crafted.
it's
Like
so
that's the thing. It's the same thing that with Sleep Token. It's like it's its own thing, but it's musically so well crafted. You just can't deny how good it is. Well, I mean, people try to, of course. But and I guess what those are, and to I mean, I can put into words maybe what you might politely not, but in the world of metalcore, there's the barrier to entry with production level is such that there's a lot of bands coming out doing not necessarily the most unique things, but if you like that sound, then there's a plethora of amazing bands to enjoy. But it means that the ones that are slightly different, that stand out, especially if you've been listening to this kind of music for decades, it's like, that is something interesting and special, and then it's hard not to just obsessively listen to them. I find.
absolutely like listen to them way too much. Yeah, no, it's crazy. But there are so many awesome bands that are still doing like giving like off a classic vibe, but doing it so well. I mean, that new Kubla Khan record's really cool as well. Um, but yeah, for the most part, I've been listening to like old, the stuff I grew up listening to, or the odd
And
just like pop and R&B thing here and there.
who are
Yeah.
your kind of cornerstones from back in the day in the rock universe that you're listening to still today? That's peak.
Um, so Under Earth would be in there. Um, like Fallout Boy was a
Oh,
big one
nice.
for me. Like, yeah, Fallout Boy, Mike and Panic. That was kind of my
Oh
kind of
yes.
coming up. A band that's like I grew up with, but are still like so sick is Seven Dust. I
Oh
listen to Seven Dust
yeah.
all the time. Like they're still their new music's like just getting better and better. It's kind of crazy.
Yeah, they've been
Um,
very consistent for sure. I discovered them. This is how old I am. By in Virgin Megastore, you'd put in there'd be a scanning machine. You put in the barcode, and you'd hear like 20 seconds of a song. You'd be like, "That sounds kind of cool. I guess I'll buy the whole album in
yeah,
case it's good." We don't do that anymore. But that's how I discovered them, and
absolutely,
I was like, "This is sick."
so good. Um,
Yeah.
Slipknot. I mean, a bunch of classics. Um, there's probably plenty more I'm missing, but those are the ones that pop to mind.
All good stuff and a range. It's very nice to see. Now, looking ahead to the future, also we've got Download Festival next year. What can you say about what you've got coming up in terms of either writing, recording, or touring? I guess you've done a lot of touring, so probably not touring immediately, I'd imagine.
Yeah, I mean we've got what have we got? We've got Japan coming up in a week or so, which is exciting. We love going to Japan. So yeah, we're doing that, and we've got Good Things Festival in Australia to round out the year. That's like early mid December. But besides that, there's nothing really like we've got plans and stuff, I guess, but nothing really on the cards. We're just kind of slowly writing. Um, yeah, once again, not putting too much pressure on time and stuff with this stuff.
Great.
And then, yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens around Download Festival as well. We might have some other stuff to announce. But until then, it's pretty chill end of the year slash early next year.
Nice. Yeah, it would be a lot to fly all the way to the UK for one gig. I have to imagine it'd be beneficial to have a couple of things around there, but sure, we'll
Absolutely.
see. Well, Marcus, thank you so much for your time. I've absolutely enjoyed every moment of this conversation. Looking forward to whatever it is that your band comes up with next. Cheers very
Thank
much
you,
indeed.
Steve. Take it easy.
What a pleasure it was to chat there with Marcus Bridge from Northlane about that excellent band. Do go check out their EP, Mirror's Edge, which came out earlier in 2024 if you haven't already. And also, frankly, all of their other records before. They're such a consistently good and interesting band. I'll be sure to add some links in the description of this episode to their social media accounts and the rest. You can go follow that band and see what new music they release or tours they come out with in future. There's also a link to my Discord server if you want to chat to me about music or this episode of the podcast in general. If you haven't yet, make sure you subscribe or follow this podcast on whatever platform you're enjoying this from. Hope you enjoyed this, and hopefully I'll see you in another episode very soon.